Hello and welcome. I'm Clark Crawford, your host, and this is my sports talk show. I'm super excited to be filming my first episode for you, so I hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe. Let's dive into it. So, my favorite team, the Houston Astros, are 85 and 68 on the season. They recently dropped two or three to the Baltimore Orioles, salvaging the last game of the series. Christian Javier was excellent and only going 5 innings, but he showed some promise with 11 strikeouts. He shut down Baltimore, only giving up one run, and the Astros scored twice late, once in the eighth off of a Jeremy Pena RBI double, and then winning the game in the ninth inning with a Mauricio Dubon RBI single. The Astros salvaged the series, and they're going to play Kansas City this weekend at home, their last home series of the season. So we're going to dive a little bit into that, and also we're going to get into some NFL talk of week 3 of the season. So Monday's game with the Astros might be the most heartbreaking loss of the season. Ryan Presley giving up the 3-run homer in the ninth. I was watching the game with some friends. That was an awful ending. You had even Martin Maldonado, arguably one of the worst players in the major leagues. I have him as the worst player, but nonetheless, even he hit a solo homer in the eighth inning as it extended Houston's lead to 7-5. It looked like they weren't going to look back, and next thing you know, they lost the game, and it was a heartbreaker, as I said. Just a bad loss on the season. Houston let the Rangers and Seattle catch all the way back up with them. They had almost a 3-game lead just less than a week ago. And now after this series, after another series loss, they lost the series to Oakland, Kansas City, and now Baltimore. That's 3 series losses in a row. And Houston has Seattle and Texas in their extremely close in their rearview mirror, only half a game ahead of those two division rivals. So that moves us on to Tuesday's loss. Tuesday, I happen to be at the game. Unfortunately, I am 1-3 in games this year. Not a record that I'm proud of, but you win some, you lose some. Tuesday's loss, Hunter Brown was a disaster. He gave up 7 runs, earned runs. The highlights of the game: Kyle Tucker hit his 28th home run, Bregman's solo shot, and Yainer Diaz's 23rd home run of the season. We'll get into the Diaz versus Maldonado. Should he play? Should he not? Who should play? I'll give you my thoughts on that as well. Like I said, Wednesday was the series win for the Astros, the only game they won in the series, as they salvaged a game and not getting swept. Had they have gotten swept, Seattle and Texas both won yesterday, and that would have put Houston half a game behind the two of them instead of half a game up. Houston, they've been in a recent stretch where you lost 2 of 3 to Oakland, you lost 2 of 3 to Kansas City, and now you've lost 2 of 3 to Baltimore. They realistically had a golden chance to really put some distance between them, Seattle, and Texas, and they have failed to do so. It is, as an Astros fan, it's disappointing to say the least, though they still have time to make it up and finish the season strong. They play still the worst team in the league, Kansas City, for 3 more this weekend. While as an Astros fan, you're hoping Seattle and Texas will beat up on each other. As long as one of them does not sweep the other, you still should be in good shape, because I think Houston, with that incredible win, you were down most of the game. You were down 1-0 early, and you come back to win 2-1. Yeah, the offense wasn't there, but Houston I think they showed some promise. They had some good at-bats. They had just some terrible luck, as Abreu speared one up the middle, hit off the mound with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 8th inning, and the ball hits off the back of the mound. I firmly believe if that ball does not hit off the back of the mound, Houston scores multiple runs there, and they don't even need to go to the bottom of the 9th, and they would win that game at least 3-1, and who knows, they could have pushed the lead to 4, 5, 6-1, but we won't get too much into that. Houston won the game regardless, and they sent their fans home happy as they're still under 500 at Minute Maid Park, which is the disappointment of the season. But even with all the disappointments, the injuries, and everything that's gone on this season, Houston is still, for now, they're half a game ahead in the division. So it's been a remarkable season, to say the least. Now, to say they're as good as their recent stretch from 2015 on, other than 2016, probably not their best team. I would argue definitely not, but they're still capable of winning a World Series, and we will see if they're able to do that. One of the discussions, should Maldonado play, should Diaz play, that I want to talk about. Well, you have one catcher hitting below 200 and the other is around the 280s. I really wish it were as simple as forget the veteran leadership, forget what the stats, or no, not forget what the stats say, but forget all the things that they say Maldonado brings to the table. In my opinion, they're irrelevant because everything shows what the eye test shows. Yainer Diaz is the better catcher. Maldonado has fallen off a cliff, and Houston, I firmly believe if they want to win the World Series this year at some point in the postseason, or even if Maldonado starts the game and plays 3 or 4 innings, you really need to consider Diaz needs to get the at bats. For me, I don't care if you're winning the game by 1, 4, 5, or if you're behind by 1, 4, or 5. Diaz needs to be in there 80+% of the time. I understand certain pitchers want to pitch to Maldonado, but what they're seeing this season, almost every pitcher on the staff's ERA is higher with Martin Maldonado behind the dish. So I don't know what other explanation you need. I wish Dusty Baker would pull his head out from under the covers and say, hey, I've been making a mistake for a while now. My personal thought was the switch should have been made about mid-season, and you should let Diaz take over. Dusty's thoughts of, Martin's my veteran, and he made comments earlier in the season of, well, I need Maldonado to catch all of my pitchers. Well, his thought is right. I believe both catchers should catch every pitcher, but my issue with that is he's only done that for Martin Maldonado, and in my opinion, he's hurt Diaz's development because Diaz has not caught Fromber all year. And since Justin Verlander gets to pick his own personal catcher, whether Dusty will admit that or not, it's true. He gets his own personal catcher of who he wants to catch. And we have seen he has chosen Maldonado, as I believe he would be better with Diaz. I believe he's got to learn at some point. And if his comments earlier in the season were Maldonado has to catch every catcher, well, what if Maldonado went down with an injury? And that's what I've been saying since those comments were made. I believe it was about May when he caught Hunter Brown. And that since then, he caught Hunter Brown, I believe it was 8 starts in a row. His ERA skyrocketed, and it has since continued to skyrocket as Brown has not had a good about last 15 to 20 starts of the season. He sprinkled in a couple good outings, but overall, not good numbers. So the Maldonado versus Diaz debate, Dusty is, in my opinion, wrong. As if you say one catcher needs to catch all the pitchers, well, then your other catcher needs to be prepared. And I'm not saying he has to catch Fromber or Justin Verlander every start, but I think he needs to be prepared to catch them because, and Hopefully it doesn't happen, knock on wood. I never wish injuries upon another player, but hypothetically, if Maldonado goes down and say it's the last game of the season, he breaks his arm and he can't catch. Well, then now Diaz is having to scramble and learn from mostly Fromber and Verlander's stuff, how they want their slider to break, how they want their curveball to break on the fly, because uh, I haven't seen any evidence. I haven't seen any posts from any of the writers or any videos out there that he's caught their bullpens. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't in a while. I'm sure he caught a few of these pitchers in the bullpen in spring training, but it, from all the looks I've seen, been at the ballpark a few times, it's always been Maldonado. So I hope for the Astros' sake, because certain pitchers prefer Maldonado, that hopefully he doesn't get hurt, even though I disagree that he should be playing the bulk of the games. But for the Astros' sake, they don't need him to get hurt, because I think at this point it would be a little bit of a disservice because Diaz isn't used to particular pitchers. So that's my take on the whole Maldonado and Diaz. You can give me your thoughts here in the comments and let me know what you think, if you think I'm right or if you think Dusty Baker is right. So the last Astros thing I want to get into is what I think the playoff rotation will be. My prediction on the playoff rotation would be, I think, and this is in the event the Astros make the playoffs, they're on the fringe, though a lot of the graphics I show or I've seen and looked into still believe the Astros have a 90+% chance to make the playoffs, which, so in that case, I'm going with and making my postseason prediction of they win the division and they will likely need at least 3, and I'll even give you 4 starters to say who I believe they're going to use and what they're going to do with the pitching staff. So my playoff rotation would be Fromberg takes game 1. He's the ace of the staff. I understand you have Justin Verlander, and he's your future Hall of Famer. But because Fromberg was there to start the season and he took the ball game 1, I think he needs to take it for playoff game 1. And then to follow him, and I'm using 4 starters, that would be, you would go Fromber, Justin Verlander. I would go JP France in game 3. He has proven enough this season. I know he hasn't been great lately, but I would go JP France. And then my 4th starter with a little bit of recent success, not, a whole lot, but I would go Christian Javier with his postseason success last year. He threw the ball pretty well. That's what I would do, and give Javier the ball number 4. What I believe Dusty will do, because of kind of how he's gone with the season, my prediction, Dusty will go Verlander game 1, Fromber game 2, with Javier in game 3, because he has postseason experience over JP France from last season, and then JP France at number 4. So that's my prediction there. And for today's episode, that will wrap up the Astros talk. And let's get into some NFL Week 3 preview. So NFL Week 3 preview, you've got the Giants and the 49ers. The Giants are 1-1 with the 2-0 49ers. The Giants are going to be without Saquon Barkley. That's a huge disadvantage, as Daniel Jones's number, I don't have it up with me, but I know his numbers are not great without Saquon Barkley in his career. I've got the 49ers winning that game and moving to 3-0, while the Giants, who really overachieved last year, Brian Dable, their coach, did a excellent job last year, but they really overachieved. And if they fall to 1-2, I believe they're in danger of missing the playoffs. Not to say they couldn't, but I think they're in danger. So I've got the San Francisco 49ers moving to 3-0, and they could very well represent, they're talented enough and very well represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Them or the Eagles, who I'll get into later, seem to be the top 2 teams in the NFC right now. Moving along, we've got the 0-2 Texans at the 1-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence did not look good last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. I've got the Jaguars beating the Texans as CJ Stroud has looked solid, but Houston's injuries seem to be mounting up too highly. I'm a Texans fan as being from Houston, but right now, D'Amico Ryans has too many things going on his hand to say, hey, we're ready to win games. Not quite yet. I believe they'll win 4 or 5, maybe even up to 6 games later in the year if they can get some health. But we don't know if Laremy Tunsil's going to play. The 2 starting safeties might be out again as Petrie played week 1 but did not play last week. And the injuries are mounting up as it was reported earlier today that I read on one of my fantasy apps that Derek Stingley is out this week. So you could have 3 of your starting 4 secondary out in the week. I think Trevor Lawrence will beat up the Texans defense, and I have the Jaguars moving to 2-1 with the Texans falling to 0-3. Moving on to the Colts, 1-1, and the 2-0 Ravens. The Colts might be without Anthony Richardson, so I'm going to take the Ravens. Lamar Jackson has been okay. I know they lost J.K. Dobbins, but the Ravens at home should take care of business against the Colts. I have the Ravens with about a 10-point victory over the Colts. The Titans will travel to Cleveland, 2 1-1 teams, which for Tennessee, they're really bottom feeders this year. To me, they're where you don't want to be in any sport. They're kind of in mediocrity, in my opinion. They're 1-1, but where are they really heading? They have still a top tier running back, but he's aging and aging fast. He's pushing 30 as he's 29, and they haven't really found a quarterback. I know Tannehill's taken them to the playoffs before, but he's aging, getting older, not progressing. He's on the verge of hitting a hard regress. I don't think Malik Willis is the answer, and I didn't like Will Levis coming out of the draft. So Tennessee's kind of in a quarterback carousel. What they're doing, do they know? They really don't. So I've got the Browns beating Tennessee, even though both teams seem to have a tough defense this year. I've got Cleveland going to 2-1 and the Titans falling to 1-2. The 2-0 Dolphins against the 0-2 Broncos. The Sean Payton era has not started well as the Broncos tried to make a comeback and lost 35-33 to the Commanders last week. I've got the Red Hot Dolphins, who still may be without Jalen Waddle, but as long as you got Tua and Tyreek Hill, you should win a lot of games. And I've got the Dolphins blowing out the Broncos, moving to 3-0 and taking care of business at home. The Patriots, who are 0-2 at the 1-1 Jets. The Jets were, in my opinion, lucky to beat the Bills in their only win of the season so far. But after losing Aaron Rodgers week 1, the Bills really should have taken care of business and beaten them, but they didn't. The Jets did not look good with Zach Wilson. In my opinion, as expected, Zach Wilson's in his 3rd year has not shown a lot of promise, though he got a lot of high praise coming out of the draft. So we'll see what Zach Wilson brings. I've got the Jets winning in a nail-biter. Bill Belichick without Tom Brady, it's starting to really look like it was more Brady than Belichick. I won't get into too much to that, but I've got the Jets moving to 2-1 and the Patriots falling to 0-3. The 1-1 Bills are at the 2-0 Commanders. Josh Allen got back on track last week after abysmal 4-turnover performance by the Bills offense against the Jets week 1. And the 2-0 surprising Commanders, they've won a couple of games here, though I've got Josh Allen taking down the Commanders. I don't think the Commanders are that great of a team. They've got a solid defense, but I've still got major questions about their now starting quarterback, Sam Howell. And if the Commanders season goes in the tank, I think they will relieve Ron Rivera, of his duties. So I've got the Bills going to 2-1 and the Commanders falling to 2-1. The 2-0 Falcons are at the 1-1 Lions. The Falcons and I'm going to call it an upset the Packers last week in a surprising fashion as the Packers had a late lead and let it slip. And the Falcons are 2-0. Their new prize, Bijan Robinson, has looked great, as many fantasy experts expected him to. And their two-headed rushing attack with Bijan and Tyler Algier are looking good. Now they're at the 1-1 Lions, who did beat the reigning Super Bowl champion Chiefs in Week 1, though they lost a close one against Seattle last week. I've got the Lions bouncing back, moving to 2-1, and the Falcons falling to 2-1. I don't think the Falcons are for real yet this year. They still can't figure out how to use their offensive weapons. Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare for defenses, and he started hot, and it seems they can't even get him the ball. Now, I know they're a run-first offense, but that's not a good look. And also Drake London is probably going to be hit or miss as in a lot of the matchups here, because they've got, in my opinion, they've got a lot of offensive weapons, and their coach just isn't quite using them correctly. And also, I don't think Desmond Ridder is the answer at quarterback. So the Lions take that game. You've got the 2-0 Saints at the 1-1 Packers. The Saints have looked solid so far. They were able to handle Carolina, and they won their last week, and they won their Week 1 matchup as well. The 1-1 Packers should have beaten the Falcons last week, but they let that one slip away in Atlanta. They're in the frozen tundra of Green Bay this week. The Saints aren't quite used to cold weather, even though it's not too cold yet. But Jordan Love has looked solid. I trust the Packers and their defense more, even though the Packers may be without Aaron Jones for a second consecutive week. The Saints have won this their final week with Alvin Kamara out due to suspension with the offseason nightmare he had 2 years ago. Did not get suspended until this year, even though it probably should have come last year. I still have the Packers winning a close one and moving to 2-1, and the Saints falling to 2-1. The most interesting game of the week, in my opinion, the 0-2 Chargers, who were in the playoffs last year, against the 0-2 Vikings, who were in the playoffs last year. Two teams that, if there was ever a must-win this early in the season, well, both teams need it. The Chargers lost a close one to the Dolphins, arguably should have won in Week 1. And the Vikings, they came close to winning last week against the Eagles, but couldn't pull it off. They had just way too many turnovers. Even though Kirk Cousins leads the league in passing, the Vikings are 0-2. Kirk Cousins has looked good. The defense is still poor. They got a new defensive coordinator. I think they've improved a little, but I think it's going to take time and at least take a year, if not 2 years, for them to significantly improve. And so I will take, even though both teams have been disappointing this year, even with Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator for the Chargers, I will take the Vikings in a close one, more than likely going to be a shootout, and I'll take the Vikings at home, getting their first one of the year. Then next, you've got the 0-2 Panthers, who Bryce Young has not looks great at the 1-1 Seahawks. The Seahawks went and stole one from the Lions last week. And in this game, Geno Smith has looked okay so far this year. He was good last week. I've got the Seattle Seahawks should easily handle the Panthers, who are not quite ready with Bryce Young. And the biggest issue for the Panthers is that they continue and move to 0-3. They do not own their first-round pick, as they traded it to the Chicago Bears last year in order to trade up for Bryce Young. So that could be a problem for the Panthers in trying to progress their offense and or their defense and trying to improve their team if they fall to 0-3 to possibly give Bryce Young some more help, because, in my opinion, they have one of the worst receiving cores in the league. So Seattle moves to 2-1. The 2-0 Cowboys at the 0-2 Cardinals. The Cowboys have been outstanding so far this season, and the Cardinals, well, they're 0-2 as expected. They let one slip to the Giants as they were up 21-0 at halftime last week. I couldn't believe that with my eyes, even though I saw part of the second half after the Giants began a comeback, and the Giants ended up winning. The Cowboys, unfortunately, lost Trayvon Diggs, their star corner, to a season-ending injury at practice today. So that's going to impact the Cowboys defense. I don't think it'll impact them enough this week to drop their first game of the season. So I've got the Cowboys moving to 3-0 and the Cardinals dropping to 0-3. The Chicago Bears are 0-2 at the 1-1 Chiefs. The Bears have not looked good. And in my opinion, Justin Fields is not the answer at quarterback. If their poor season continues, I really believe the Bears need to move on from Justin Fields in the offseason and try to find a quarterback. Justin Fields is kind of he knows how to run, but his passing isn't great, and he makes a lot of mistakes. And I don't believe he really looks for the open receiver. I think he's more or less wanting to scramble every play. And then on the Chiefs side, I have them winning probably in a at least a 10 or 14 or maybe a 17-point blowout. Kansas City struggled last week, but they did get Travis Kelce back. Some of the receivers looked a little better as they did play a tough Jacksonville team who they beat in the playoffs last year and, of course, won the Super Bowl. I've got the Chiefs, Travis Kelce. The Patrick Mahomes connection is going to be really good, and Kansas City is probably going to manhandle the Bears, and the Chiefs move to 2-1 as they try to defend their Super Bowl title, and the Bears will likely fall to 0-3. Now we move on to the Sunday night game featuring the 1-1 Steelers and the 1-1 Raiders. An interesting matchup. The Raiders, Josh Jacobs has looked awful, and he was last year's rushing champion. The Steelers, with their on the backs of their defense and namely TJ Watt, won a nail biter on Monday night against the Browns. They could easily lost that game, but they were able to shut Watson down enough, and they stole one from Cleveland, and Cleveland lost Nick Chubb in that game, which is a brutal loss. They did sign Kareem Hunt, but that's not going to quite make up for Nick Chubb when he's healthy, top 5 running back. So Pittsburgh goes to Las Vegas. I have Pittsburgh winning that game. Kenny Pickett might be the real deal. I think the jury is still out. We're going to see, but I think the Steelers will take the Raiders down in the interesting Sunday night matchup. Now, Monday night features 2 games, the last 2 games of the week with the Eagles 2-0 and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe the most surprising 2-0 team, as a lot of people were dogging them for just signing Baker Mayfield in the offseason after losing Hall of Famer Tom Brady, or future Hall of Famer Tom Brady. The Eagles 2-0, Tampa Bay 2-0. We'll see who comes out in that one. I've got the Eagles winning. Their offense is too good. It looks like they started to pick it up. Next week, I know they have a new offensive coordinator, so the offense has started a little slow this year. I know a lot of people who have A.J. Brown in fantasy are not happy, but A.J. Brown's going to get going. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. Devontae Smith. Their run game looked incredible last week. If they can keep DeAndre Swift healthy, they can really put it on some teams and probably put regularly 30 to 40 points up. I have the Eagles taking down Tampa Bay and ending their 2-0 and taking down Tampa Bay, taking their record to 2-1. Tampa Bay, I think, has overperformed so far this season, and we'll see in the coming weeks if Tampa Bay can surprise teams and possibly make the playoffs. We'll see coming up. The last game of the week and the later of the Monday night games at the regular scheduled time. The first one is at about 6 o'clock, and the second one's at your normal about 7:15 Central Time. You got the Rams going into Cincinnati. The Bengals have arguably been the most disappointing team of the season at 0-2. The Rams are 1-1 as they gave San Francisco a run for their money last week, as that was surprising to a lot of people, as no Cooper Kupp. The Rams offense doesn't look like they've really missed a beat. They've been without Kupp since midseason last year. They shut him down for the year as he probably wasn't healthy, and they were trying to lose games and for a better draft pick. But the Rams are 1-1. The Bengals, disappointing, 0-2. I don't see any chance the Bengals move to 0-3. I know Joe Burrow has not played well all season or in the first 2 games of the season, but the Bengals are too talented to go to 0-3. So I've got Cincinnati winning a close one. I think the Rams keep it close because they still have a solid defense. And they also they'll compete. Matthew Stafford's a competitor, but the Bengals win that game. So my last thoughts of the week are you've got the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Vikings looking to avoid 0-3 starts. Can they do it? One of those teams is guaranteed to be 0-3 with the Chargers and the Vikings playing each other. I believe whichever team out of those two starts 0-3 is not going to make the playoffs, as the other one could maybe sneak in at the wild card. The Chargers, if you start 0-3, you definitely won't win that division. The Vikings, if you start 0-3, it's less likely to win that division. But at the same time, I didn't have them winning the division in the first place. So we will see what happens there, as I have two of the three teams with two of them playing each other, avoiding 0-3 starts. And then the most surprising thing that I've seen are these three 2-0 teams with Tampa Bay, Atlanta, and Washington. Washington has Sam Howell at quarterback, though Eric Bieniemy seems to be making a huge difference there. We'll see if they can continue that run. Atlanta, they could be a surprise playoff team, as somebody has to win that division. I believe it would be New Orleans, but Atlanta could definitely surprise. Bijan looks like the real deal. And with the run first offense, if they can continue it, we will see if Atlanta can continue their success so far, and they could be a very good team this year and sneak into the playoffs or a wild card spot. We will see. And lastly, to finish out this episode, Tampa Bay is the other surprising, as Baker Mayfield supposedly stole signals in week one, and they might have won. And they did win their week one game. And as he had an incredible second half, and they also won last week. So the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers without Tom Brady. Yes, without Tom Brady, they are 2-0. Surprising. We will see if they can pull off the win at home against the Super Bowl losers, Philadelphia Eagles, who had a great year last year, the Super Bowl runner-ups, as I should say. But we'll see if Tampa Bay can continue their success and move to 3-0. So those are my three most disappointing teams and my three surprise teams of the season so far. And that'll wrap up my first episode. I hope you all enjoyed. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.